Hi, you're with Trevor Yagan on the first Ableton session tutorial. So what we're going to do to start out is open up the program. I'm going to show you the actual file directory of where it is. So if you're on a Mac, you're in luck because that's what I'm teaching today. So on a Macintosh, you click on your desktop, open a new browser window, and you go into your applications folder. You should find Ableton 9 Suite right up towards the top of your browser, your applications folder. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click on that, but before we do, I'm going to show you that you can actually take the Ableton 9 Suite from your applications, drag it down into your dock if you want, so you have it down here and you can pull it up a lot quicker later on. For now, what we're going to do is we're just going to open it here by double clicking on it, and it'll open the Ableton Live 9 dialog. It shows we're running Ableton Live 9 Suite in 64-bit. 9 comes out in 32-bit and 64-bit. The difference is if you got more than 4 gigs of RAM, 64-bit Ableton will utilize over 4 gigs of RAM, whereas if you're just using the 32-bit, you got 4 gigs of RAM to work with. So if you're finding that you have like can't process all the data in time, an overload message, you might want to try switching over to the 64-bit version, see if that does the trick for you. Otherwise, if you got 4 gigs of RAM, I mean, the 32 and 64-bit work just the same. So moving right along, we got the program open. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to go up to File and go to Open Recent Set and open the tutorial file that I created for this session. Because I already have some loops loaded up here and everything ready to go, so I can show you exactly how the functionality of the program works. All right, there are on your live main screen. This is your live main screen. Now they came out with Live 9.1 beta yesterday, so they're utilizing the dual screen option, which gives you 2 screens. I haven't had a chance yet to extensively look into that, but for the sake of tutorial, let's just focus on the one screen here with Live's main screen. Right here you see Session View. If I hit the Tab key, it'll take me over to Arrange View. Now these two views are linked to each other, but handle loops and clips in drastically different ways. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to show you the one thing that outside of a lesson is the best thing you can possibly do whilst learning the Ableton Live program, and that is down in the bottom left-hand corner there's a little tab that opens up the Info View screen. Now the Info View screen is essential in that wherever you have the mouse, wherever you're scrolling over with the mouse, if you look down into the Info View screen, it gives you identification and a brief explanation of what it is that your mouse is currently hovering over. So for instance, right now, I have it over this red line here. It tells me that that's a breakpoint envelope, and that I can use that to draw automation and automation curves over my tracks, which we'll get into at a later date. That's kind of an advanced feature. But the main point is that you have an info view down here, so if you get stuck on something, you can look down there and it gives you an explanation of what's going on. The next thing that we're going to look at is the tab in the upper left-hand corner, which opens and closes your browser. Now, Ableton 9 has completely revamped their browser. I find that the search field up here, which we'll get to in a minute, is a lot more comprehensive. It's a lot easier to use, and it definitely helps you organize and find what you're looking for a lot faster. Now, and the next tab down that we're going to look at is your Groove Pool tab, which is right above your Info View. This opens up your your clips and groove pools, which we'll get to later on, the advantages of using that and creating swings and timing things differently. For now, we'll keep that closed. Other things in your Ableton Live main window are your transport controls up here, where you have your arrangement position, your follow, your play button, stop, your record, your MIDI arrange overdub, your automation arm, and your re-enable automation, which we'll get to all those features later on. You also have your loop start punch-in point, your punch-in switch, your loop, your punch-out switch, and your loop punch region length, which we'll get to all these features later on. And over on the far right-hand side, you have your draw mode switch, your computer MIDI keyboard. This is the key map mode switch, which when you turn that on, you'll be able to route your keys out from your keyboard to control certain elements inside of Live. Your key MIDI out indicator, so you can tell when there's MIDI messages being transmitted in the program or key messages. This is for MIDI mapping, so you can map a MIDI keyboard's keys and knobs to essential functions within the program. Your CPU load meter, your hard disk overload indicator, and your MIDI track in and out indicator. So that's the basic layout of the top. And then at the bottom of the screen here, right next to the right of your info view, you have your clip view. It's either your clip view, or if you double click on the header for the track's respective name, it's your instrument or sample. It's basically your device display, so you can see what kinds of MIDI instruments or plugins, effects plugins that you have loaded onto each respective track, which we'll get into those later on as well. And again, to switch between the arrangement view, which is shown now, and the session view, it's simply by hitting the tab button, or you can go up here to the upper right hand corner, and there's a button, a sideways button for the arrange and a vertical button for session view. So moving our way into session view, as you can see, this is where you'll play your clips, which your clips are loaded in here, triggered by the little play button right next to each respective clip. So you can trigger your clips in your session view, and clips and your session view, everything works vertically. So when you have two clips loaded on one channel strip in session view, only one clip can play at a time. So when I click play on the clip below the top clip in session view, it stops the playback of the top clip and starts the playback of the bottom clip. Now when they're next to each other on two separate audio tracks, they can both play simultaneously, so you can layer the two over each other. It's one important thing to grasp in that you can only, on each audio track in session view, you can only play one clip at a time. Now, if you want to stop the clip, the blank slot in your audio strip or your audio channel in session view works the same as if you had a clip loaded. Whereas if you click to activate this clip, it's going to stop this clip because, again, it works off the same theory that only one clip can be playing simultaneously. So you start the clip, you want to stop the clip, you simply go down to one of these stop buttons in the blank slot, you click the stop button. It'll stop that clip. Now, if you notice over here, you have it'll highlight when you click on one of these slots. It highlights vertically all the way across the whole side here. Well, what that's indicating is that you're selecting a cell within that scene. Ableton's organized these into scenes so that if you have from slot to as you move down the slots, if you look across here, you can go over here and click this play button. It'll click and it'll activate everything in this scene. Now the row below it is another scene. So you click there. Now it's just activating that scene where you might have a variation of a different, maybe you loop just the second bar of the existing loop in the first scene down to that second slot, and you want that to play. And that's handy in that what you can do is I can take this loop I have in the first scene, I can copy it down to the second scene, and I just did that by holding down the Option key while I click and drag that top loop down into the second scene here. And what I'm going to do is I can go in here and I can make that copy that we made of the loop in the first scene just play the first bar, so that when we click on the first scene, we have our breakbeat going. We click the second scene, first scene. So you can create variations in that as your song progresses. If you have like a quick one measure break in order to transition over into a new movement of your piece or your song that you're writing, you can create a scene that has that breakbeat with all the little different elements on different audio tracks, creating a more drastic transition to get you over into that next movement in the piece of music that you're working on. So that's the scenes. Now, say, kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but if you do have audio playing over here, or you have something playing over in your arrangement view, the second you click over here in session view, it's going to interrupt what's going on its respective track over here. So if there's something playing on audio 3 right here, like we have a loop up over here, and you click to trigger a scene over in session view, it's going to cut off what's playing over here in the arrangement view. So if we go in session view and we wanted we want to hear what's going on, what our original composition is in the arrangement view, you can go and you can click this little button down here right above your master fader, and that will take you back to arrangement. Now basically what that means is it's going to deactivate all your clips that you have activated in the session view, and it's going to go back to whatever is already playing on the timeline here. So it's very handy if you're, you get like 30 or 40 tracks up here, and you got a bunch of things that you're experimenting with. Now you want to switch back and hear what you originally accomplished in your arrangement view. So you click that button, and that's going to cancel out anything that you triggered in the session view and bring you back to the arrangement view. Now we're moving on to the arrangement view. Now in arrangement view, you have MIDI tracks and you have audio tracks. Your MIDI tracks all consist of audio instruments that are in the form of plugins that you can download third-party with Ableton Suite. It comes with a bunch of instruments. You have programs like Operator, which is an FM-based synthesizer. And with your MIDI tracks, there's no audio being processed. No audio loops or samples are being processed on it. What it is, it's your keyboard and it's MIDI information. So what you do is you program your MIDI information in, and it makes it fully editable. So I go there, I program some MIDI information in, and I can go back and edit those MIDI notes, and what it's doing is simply controlling this plugin device that I have loaded onto that channel. Versus an audio effect, which takes a drum loop or whatever sample you have loaded into it, and that's an actual audio file. So the MIDI files tracks control MIDI plugins. Audio tracks control your loops and samples, Ableton clips, things of that sort. In the arrangement window, you have it set up so in the arrangement window everything works vertically, whereas the audio tracks work horizontally in session view. So in arrangement, you have your tracks lined up horizontally, which you can expand and collapse with these little arrows right here to give you more room. Once you get up to like 30, 40 tracks, you want to start collapsing down the tracks and only expanding the ones you're working with in order to keep everything. You don't have to keep scrolling up and down. You can just kind of focus on the one area and really zoom in on the one area you want to work with, which you can also zoom in the audio tracks by making your arrow turn into a little bracket here at the bottom of the audio track or MIDI track, and then you click and just drag. And you can do that with one track, or if you hold Option and click and drag, it'll respectively change each track so that they're all adjusting the same. But if you have everything collapsed and you just want that one track to be open wider, you just go to the bottom of that track, right underneath the name of the track, and you just click and drag. And that's going to open your track up so you can really get a good look at, you can see it better with audio files, you can really get a good look at what it is that you're working with audio-wise. Okay, and then over just to the right of that, we have our mixer drop area. Now in your mixer drop area, this is where you enable your track. You have volume for the track. You have your sends levels. You have the solo button, so you can just solo just so you hear just this track and nothing else. And your record enable button. Now your record enable button varies between your MIDI and audio tracks, but we'll get into that later. All right, now we'll move on to the browser. As I said before, the browser has been seriously revamped since version 8. In version 9, it separates everything into categories, which include your sounds, your drums, your instruments, audio effects, MIDI effects, your Max for Live plugins, your plugins, which include your audio units and your VST plugins, all your third-party units that you get. It includes Ableton clips, which are a collaboration of different things. We'll go into explaining what Ableton clips consist of later on. And samples, which are just audio files that you can throw in and create clips with in the audio tracks in Ableton. Now it also includes, kind of similar to what Ableton did in the previous versions where they gave you 3 folders, but this time you can add as many folders as you want, and there's a bunch of pre-designed destinations for you, including packs, your user library, what files you have in the current project, including your Ableton Live file, and a folder with all the samples you're recorded within that session. Navigation within the browser is fairly simple. The best methodology I use with it is I like using the arrows on the keypad. If you look, when I arrow right, it'll always take me down in the directory tree. So for instance, I arrow right, it takes me into the audio effects over here into the names. Now I arrow over to, okay, the dynamic tube. I hit the up and down arrows to get to that dynamic tube. Now I hit the right arrow again. Now it opens that directory so that I can go through the presets. I hit up and down to scroll through the presets. And if I want to get out of that, back to the dynamic tube directory, I just hit the left arrow. It takes me up to dynamic tube. I hit the left arrow again, and it closes that folder with all the presets. Now this is the same as going to something that's a little bit more complex, like your sound section. Your sounds and the category sounds are all divided up into different genres and different feelings of sound. So when I hit the right arrow and go into my sounds category, I can arrow up and down. I arrow down to piano and keys. I hit the right arrow key, and it opens up all my pianos and keys. Now you just heard sound when I go through these pianos and keys, because down here you can see the waveform underneath, which is that Art fifth, and then you see this little headphone. When the headphone is lit up blue, that means that I'm auditioning the sound as I scroll through them. So I turn on the audition right here. And now when I arrow up and down, I'm scrolling through all the individual sounds. Now if I want to get out of that directory and go back to my category of sounds, I hit the left arrow again. Brings me back up to the folder that I was just in, piano and keys. I hit the left arrow again. It closes the piano and keys. So now I can go down and arrow down to voices, hit the right arrow, and scroll through voices to see if there's any voices that I like. So the new browser is very simple. One thing that I found that the old browser lacked was the search field seemed kind of laggy, whereas in this one, the search field really seems to be intuitive. You know, as you're typing in the search field, it automatically updates instantaneously, so you can find the sound that you want in the most expeditious possible fashion. So if I want to look for a bass sound within, it can take me to all these bass. Now I want to look, say you want to get a little bit more specific and find a detuned bass. You just type it in that field. Now I have everything for my sounds bass category. I have a detuned attack bass and a detuned 2 low pass bass. So it's auto updating as you type each letter as well. So I mean, you know, the more letters you type, the more specific it gets, obviously. But if you just type in 4 letters out of a word because, you know, there's a variation on spelling of the word maybe in your samples folder or what have you, it'll show you just those 4 letters and keep updating as you go to the 5th, 6th, 7th letter. It'll narrow it down further and further for you, which I find is a great feature. Also, you can, inside of it, you can do it's called the sort order. So with this, it really doesn't matter. What I find useful for sort order is if I have a bunch of samples that I've created, and say I did some on December 6th, I did some on January 15th, and I did some more on November 12th. I can go up here and automatically it sorts everything ascending by name. Ascending by name, so alphabetically ascending. You can click again on name, that makes it alphabetically descending, so it goes from Z to A, essentially. Now, if I want to sort by something else, like the date created, if I created these samples, you know, I want all my freshest, newest samples that I just imported or I just created. If you go up to where it says name here and you right-click, you can go and I can select date modified, or you have other options. You can choose size, type, rank, and place. Size is helpful in samples in that obviously the larger size samples have a longer play duration. So like for your sweeps, if you want like a quick sweep, you go and find a smaller size sweep in your sweeps folder, or if you want a long sweep, you can go and find a larger sized, a larger bite-sized file for like a longer sweep. And that really helps in sorting things in that fashion. Okay, there's session view creation. Okay, the last thing I'm going to show you really quick, because I kind of jumped around and showed you session view already, so we kind of have an idea on your session view and how to create in a session view. I showed you how to create this drum loop. You can click the scene to trigger it, and then a little break. Now from there, say you want to really quick just go into a bass line with that break. So what I'm going to do is go in here. I'm going to open an instrument just really quick and show you how to just for sake of showing you how to create a really quick, cool break that shows the functionality of having your scenes. So I'll go in here, just create a quick instrument. Something really simple. Okay, so we got that open. So now I just go in here and all I did was just really quickly create a little bass, which I'll show you how to record in MIDI later on. For right now, I'm just creating a really quick little MIDI clip just to show you how this will work. So now I'm going to take that, and as we had before, the way it started off was we just had our little breakbeat going. Remember, if you remember correctly, we created a copy of this top scene, the breakbeat in the top scene, made a little one loop in the second scene, and now what I've done is copied the first scene's drum beat and this dolak down to this third scene and added a bass line in over here. So now, as you can hear, the sound goes to the break. You can't really hear the bass line too much, but scenes are essential in creating a variation and a natural progression to your sound, going from one scene that has just a drum loop playing to chopping that drum loop up a little bit in the second scene, and then in the third scene adding that breakbeat or that bass line in with the breakbeat and the dolan. So it kind of gives you that, you know, it's like a progression. It's more like a live band would do, as opposed to the sterility of, you know, the EDM and past genres where it was just very techno and it just moved very robotic. Now it's given it that more natural feel. So you can see what the importance of using your session view first to kind of compose your music is, and then after you're done with that, you can go back over into your arrange and just create some sort of just a simple arrangement. Now what you'll do is in your session view, you just kind of run through your scenes as they record, and then as you go, if you go back in here, now you can see that in your arrangement view it's tracked everything over. So again, we'll go more into depth about you know, effective ways to record from your arrange over to, I mean, from your scenes over to your arrange window, and then how to edit within the arrange window, which is also very important. So now that we have this idea down, you're ready to close the program, wrap up your session for your first day. If you got your massive preset, if you save the session as a whole, it'll save all your presets that you have on your devices and your plugins. It'll save all those within the set. Now, if you wanted to take that bass line, you really like that bass line, into another Ableton set, you can save it by going down to the device. There's a little disc down here. You click on that little disc. It'll save that preset into your user library so that you can come back to it. You can name it bass line. Now that's saved. And then that's not, now that just saved that bass line. If you want to save the whole session that you have within Ableton, this session, you can go to save. I have to go to live save as because I've already saved this before, but if you go to save, it'll bring you up to this window where you name your session and you determine where in your file directory you want to save it to. For me, I have it saved into this tutorial project. Now, if you haven't saved it yet and you got a folder, this is my name, Trevor, it's just some folder I have. If you just save it into a folder called Trevor, when you save it, it'll save the file, but it'll save tutorial 001, or it'll save your file name space project, and it'll save your project info folder, your samples folder, any sort of automation folder, and everything else. It'll save it into that respective folder. And there you have it. That's should be your first session in Ableton. We got into the sessions window, and we got the scenes window, session window with the scenes. We got into the arrange window. We got into some basic arrangement within session and how you can transfer that over into the arrangement window. And yeah, in the future we'll go more in depth with MIDI recording, some audio recording, bouncing, and just some basic essential Ableton tips and tricks that'll help you expedite getting those complex sounds that you hear from the popular artists today.